Привіт, я Катя. Я з України. Hi, my name is Katya. I'm from Ukraine. My story with Jesus started very early on when I was about 2 years old. I was born in Ukraine, as I said, and I was born in a family, loving family. It was a difficult time in Ukraine. The economy was not great, but my family was doing good. They had a business. Things were looking well. And at some point, my mom actually started asking questions and looking for meaning in life. And, through some family members, through some relatives, she actually came to church and she received Jesus. And, her walk with God started when I was 2. And so I was in church a lot. And her lifestyle changed. And my dad would not support this lifestyle. And so, they started having conflicts. And he actually started, having issues with alcohol. He started having affairs, and eventually he decided to divorce my mom. And so when I was 2, my mom was left with 2 kids, 2 girls. I have a sister. And also I started having a really bad health issues. And the diagnosis that the doctors gave me was a very bad autoimmune disease that would cause issues with my blood, that would cause a blood clotting disorder. And so it was a very challenging time. It was a time of poverty. It was a time of constant medical issues, but it was also a time for my mom to pray and to study the word, to be in church, and to have her faith built. When I was about 6 years old, my mom was teaching at churches, at local churches. She became discipling. She started discipling people, and in one of the groups she was discipling, she met my now stepdad, and they got married. So that was one of the answers to prayers, because my mom and my sister, they were always praying, and they were saying that me and my house will serve the Lord. And when we met our stepdad, our whole family was a family of believers. And so we were all, seeking God and just praying together and serving Him. Ever since I remember myself, my faith was always my faith. I had a great example of my mom and my stepdad in front of me, because they were always reading the Bible. They were always praying. I was at a lot of church services. But I would never consider myself a child of believers, child of believer parents. It was my faith was always my faith, and I knew Jesus since I was 2. I remember praying. I remember having visions, even though I didn't have the language for that and I didn't really understand what it was. But my relationship with Jesus were personal since I was very young. And, prayer was a big part of my life. And I remember when I was about 6 years old, I got a cold. So I was really sick, with my main disorder, or my main diagnosis. But I also had a cold sometimes, like every kid does. And I remember I was at home. I was just getting ready for bed, and I was just alone in my room. Nobody's there. Nobody's making me pray. And I just didn't like, how I felt. I didn't like having fever. I didn't like coughing. And I said a simple prayer. I said, "Father, would you please heal me?" And then He answered me. He spoke to me, and it wasn't audible. It was just, a voice inside of me. It was not my thoughts. I knew it was God speaking to me, and He said, "You are healed." Just as simple as that. And I remember I just went to bed. I went to sleep, and that's it. And next morning I woke up, and I didn't even share with anyone. I just knew I was healed. And Next day, we went to the hospital, did some blood tests, and my platelets count was not great. So my disorder was still there. I still had to take a bunch of medicine. I still had to spend time in a hospital. My whole childhood was basically spent in hospital. Since I was 2 till about 8 years old, I would spend like 6 months at a time in a hospital. So my mom wasn't working. She was spending time in a hospital with me. So very challenging. And, after that prayer and after God said he healed me, there wasn't an instant result. There wasn't an instant healing. But I remember at one point, I had to take my medicine. With each meal, I had to take like a handful of different meds. And one day I just said, I'm not going to take meds anymore. And my mom asked me why. And I said, well, God healed me. He said he healed me. And then I told her the story that, I prayed this simple prayer and he said that he healed me. And somehow my mom yielded. She trusted, the Holy Spirit that was speaking to me. She trusted that God is real in my life. And she trusted his work in my life. And she said, okay. And so I didn't take medicine. One day I didn't take medicine, another day, and the third day. And again, there was not an instant result. And it was even illegal for my mom to let, her child with a very difficult and very serious disorder, to let her child not take medicine. It was, any sane parent would not do that. But she had faith and she had trust in the Lord. And so over some period of time, day by day, month by month, just things started looking better and better, and progressively came to the point where doctors said that she is healed, and it is a miracle, because there was nothing done that that would bring me to this point of healing, because we didn't have enough money back then for the expensive medicine or expensive procedures, and we didn't have enough, the doctors didn't have enough expertise at that point, because they could not send me to another clinic or another town. So it was not done by the doctors. It was a clear miracle. And and the really cool part about that is that it doesn't have an expiration date. God's testimony in my life, it doesn't have an expiration date, because as I was growing up, God was so real to me, because, I have a proof that the fact that I'm walking and breathing and, just alive is because he healed me back then. And so, whenever I have an issue, I can just pray, and I know that God is alive and he is working and he still does miracles. And also, like currently in my life, I've been with the Lord for over 25 years, and there were countless prayers that were not answered, countless moments when my hope was not fulfilled. And so, sometimes you may get a little bit of skepticism or cynicism because of that. But, the testimony that I have is like this Ebenezer in my life that I can look back to and say, no, God is alive. He is working and he is answering prayers. And so it keeps me, coming from the skepticism and cynicism back to hope, back to faith. And also, it's not only meant for me, it also encourages others. I've shared my testimony on countless occasions around the world. And I remember just crowds of people, being encouraged in their faith, encouraged to pray, to reach out to God and just receive healing. I usually, when I tell my testimony, I speak about the woman who had this issue with blood for 12 years, and my disorder was very similar. And I always come back to that woman who reached out and touched the edge of the garments of Jesus, and she received healing. And Jesus said, your faith has healed you, daughter. So it's an honor for me to encourage other believers, other sons and daughters, to reach out, to touch the edge of his garments and to receive healing. So yeah, the testimony doesn't have an expiration date. and that God is still, working miracles in people's lives. That's my story.